Okay, I'll get started this morning by just welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the words of the Buddha in order to help students to understand the path to enlightenment. There's many different programs that we offer here. This is a program that students oftentimes make their way into after studying in other programs. But if this is your first time here learning, it's okay. You'll learn plenty today. I'll explain to you more about what this program is once we actually kind of get to it, because the way we start our class is with meditation. So if you'd like to start with meditation and join for the meditation session, the way I do this is I start with some chanting to ease into the meditation. And the chanting I do is over there on the cabinet. There's a laminated sheet. You'll be able to see the chanting, and you're welcome to join along if you'd like. Chanting, it is to ease our mind into meditation and get more benefit out of meditation itself. It's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship or prayer or anything like that. Instead, during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was used as a way to commit the teachings to memory in order to help them to be able to then practice the teachings, because you wouldn't be able to practice the teachings if you hadn't committed the teachings to memory. So the Buddha used chanting. Once every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally in order to be able to commit them to their memory. So I do this chanting as a way to help ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you look at the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha, because the Buddha's students most likely created these chants. I suspect that it was not the Buddha that created these, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you've eliminated the ego. You don't go around with this arrogance and, boastfulness and measuring and comparing people and putting yourself above people. So the Buddha wouldn't have, walked around and saying, here, chant these things to me out of respect and admiration for me. But if you learned from a teacher like the Buddha how to move from anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to this mental state of enlightenment that he was teaching, which is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that person too. So I suspect that these chants were created by his students either during his life or after his death. So I use them as a way to ease the mind into meditation, and you guys are welcome to chant along if you'd like. You're welcome to get those chanting sheets and chant along. And for anybody who's online, you can get these chanting sheets from our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. Click on free books, and then down towards the bottom, you'll see the chanting sheet there that we're going to be using. After the chanting, you're going to hear me come in with some guidance. I'm going to be guiding you during the meditation for a brief period of time. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet. We're just all meditating together. Everyone here at the temple and anyone joining us online will just all be chanting at the same, or we'll all be meditating at the same time. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand what the Pali Canon and English study group is. And then we can actually study the words of the Buddha. So if you'd like to join in meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught for meditation. He taught seated, lying, standing, and walking. These are just changes of the body positioning in order to have the body more comfortable during the meditation, because you're not interested in a body being luxurious, but you're not interested in being painful either. You'd like it to be in the middle where it's comfortable. A lot of times people are learning in the seated position when they're first starting out, but there's these other positions that you would learn at different times in your journey to enlightenment. But I'll give you some guidance on the seated position. It's important to understand that there isn't just one fixed way to sit during meditation, because all of our bodies are different and we're going to find different things to be comfortable. So whatever I share with you is just something for you to consider as guidance, but you find whatever's comfortable for you, because there isn't just one fixed way to sit. You can sit on the floor, you can sit on a chair. If you're at home, you might be on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair or something like this. You can sit however you're comfortable. If you are on the floor, you might sit with some cushions under your rear. This will kind of help soften your seat a bit. And then if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might just do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it'll impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and again allows the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you find whatever's comfortable for you. And for those of you guys that are in chairs or a bench or a wheelchair, anything like this, the same thing is true. You can really sit however you're comfortable. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair with my legs crossed. So this is an option as well. So you can really sit however you're comfortable. And then the hands and the arms can also go wherever you're comfortable. It's helpful if the upper body is erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because this is going to keep your mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. And you would like to have your mind attentive and alert while you're meditating. So by having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll keep the mind attentive and alert, because if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive and uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back. And then it also helps you with your body erect to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, because that's what we're going to be doing, is breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. So make yourself comfortable, and if you'd like to join in with the chanting, you're more than welcome to. Then I'm going to come back in with the guidance for the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Wat Tung Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakeva Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Potang Mahakawanhang Apiwateyami Sawakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys here at the temple. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. As I was mentioning, today is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the words of the Buddha. What the Buddha did during his lifetime over 2,500 years ago is he figured out how to get to this mental state of enlightenment. This mental state of enlightenment is where your mind's been trained, where it's only experiencing peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you've eliminated all your discontent feelings. You no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these and others are completely eliminated from the mind. Oftentimes people think that these feelings are caused by other people or other external situations, but these feelings are actually being caused from within your own mind. This is what the Buddha discovered. And when he discovered that, he figured out these 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind and how to uproot those. And he provided the tools and techniques of how to uproot these pollutions out of the mind. And when you do, your mind will be performing with focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll no longer be experiencing any discontent feelings or lack of concentration and difficulties and struggles. You'll notice that your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships any longer. There's probably certain relationships that you're kind of challenged in right now, maybe with your parents or your siblings or your life partner or your children or people like this. But you can change all of that. none of that is permanent. You can actually transform your mind and experience more and more peace and more joy. So the Buddha's teachings are what's going to help you to be able to do that. And he provided you this guidance to be able to help you to accomplish that mental state. But his teachings aren't based in belief. You're not believing a bunch of teachings and then hoping something happens good when you die. That's not his teachings. They're not only not belief, but they're not rules and commandments. It's not about, kind of giving everybody certain rules that they should follow. And if the world follows these rules, then the world will become a more peaceful place. The Buddha didn't explain the way the world should be. He explained the way the world is. And by you understanding the way the world is, your mind can cultivate that wisdom. And now you can navigate the world more peacefully. Because when you live in a world that you don't understand, you'll have difficulties and struggles in that world. That's what the anger and the stress and the anxiety and all those other feelings are. It's showing you that your mind is struggling and having difficulties in the world because it doesn't understand the world that it lives in. So the Buddha is explaining to you the natural laws and how the world is essentially constructed. And now when you understand those natural laws, you can actually navigate the world more peacefully. So we have different programs here that I share that are all available for students to be able to learn and grow and develop on this path. And you can learn here at the temple, but you can also learn online too, because everything we do is live streamed. It's recorded on YouTube, on Facebook, on our podcast. You can come in through Zoom. There's all these different options for you to be able to learn and grow and develop on the path. Usually what people do is they start with this first book. It's called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. You can get this for free. Everything we do here is available at no cost. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can get it on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. Usually students start with this particular book and they gradually make their way through the various programs and courses and retreats that we have. In fact, there's a program called the Group Learning Program that meets each Sunday and Wednesday, and that's going to be restarting on June 1st. So no matter where you are in the world, if you have an internet connection, you can come in and learn through that internet connection. And where you can't attend live, you can actually watch the recordings, because we gradually walk you through each Sunday, chapter by chapter in this book over a 7-month period, helping you to understand the techniques that the Buddha taught in order to train your mind and experience more and more of this peace and more of this joy. Sometimes people think that the Buddha meditated his way to enlightenment and then he instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. If you study his teachings, it was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that it took for him to be able to get to enlightenment. It's gradually training your mind. It's kind of like if there's the sun and then there's a bunch of clouds in front of the sun, you gradually peel away those clouds, that pollution, and then the rays of the sun start shining through more and more. This is the qualities of enlightenment that start to shine through in your mind as you're moving that pollution out of your mind. So if that's something you're interested in, there's various programs and courses and retreats that can help you build that foundation. What this Pali Canon and English study group is about is once a student has already developed a really good foundation, then they move into studying volumes 2 through 13 of our book series. And this particular program is a 1.5 years, and we gradually walk students through helping them to understand the words of the Buddha. So the other programs kind of lay a foundation or create a framework, and this program kind of fills that in for them. And if you haven't studied any of those other programs, it's okay. You're still going to learn plenty today, but just understand this isn't typically where people will always start. Today, we're actually in volume 10 of our book series. We're starting this book. It's called The Buddha's Way. These are the words of the Buddha where you can learn exactly what he taught in his own words, but then you don't believe those teachings. You learn them, examine them, and investigate them. You reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them, integrating them into your day-to-day life and training your mind. And this is where you see the real results coming through. The way that I do all those other programs is kind of like a traditional style of learning where I'll teach for like 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then I open up for questions. I teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes. I open up for questions. But this program is more like a study group. What I do here is I invite students here at the temple or anyone that's joining us online through Zoom to be able to read one of these chapters from the book. And these chapters are actually quite short. Here, these are the words of the Buddha. You can see it's basically like a half a page. This is chapter 1. And after a student reads a chapter, I will share some teachings on that. Then I will open up to any questions that you guys have. So if you would like to volunteer to read, if you're here at the temple, we have microphones in the white bowl there. If you could just get a microphone, press the gray button, you're going to see the lights come on, and then just hold that up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you through the live stream. If you don't use a microphone here, they won't be able to hear you through the internet. And for anybody who's in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and then unmute your microphone, and then you'll be able to read as well. And if anybody has questions here at the temple, if you guys could use the microphones, that would be great. And anybody online, if you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can put that in the comment section and I'll be able to see it. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then ask any questions that you have. So it looks like Chris is volunteering to read on Zoom. Go ahead, sir.
Right and wrong view, or right and wrong refuge. They go to many a refuge, to mountains and forests, to parks and tree shrines. People threaten with danger. That's not the secure refuge, not the supreme refuge. That's not the refuge, having gone to which you gain release from all discontentedness and stress. But when, having gone to the Buddha, the teachings, and the community for refuge, you see with right wisdom the Four Noble Truths, stress, the cause of stress, the transcending of stress, and the Noble Eightfold Path, the way to the stilling of stress. That's the secure refuge. That's the supreme refuge. That is the refuge, having gone to which you gain release from all discontentedness and stress.
Okay, thank you, sir. So what we've got here is we've got the words of the Buddha, and then we've got a reference that takes you back to the original source teachings, because these are excerpts out of the original source teachings. And then you've got words from me that are teaching you how to integrate these teachings into your life. And as I mentioned, all these books are available at no cost. What the Buddha is talking about here is how people go to all these different places to try to find release from stress and anxiety and all these other discontent feelings. You might rent a cabin in a mountain, or you might travel to some remote island somewhere, or you might come to a place like Thailand thinking that this is going to solve all your stress and anxiety and all your problems. Well, it's wonderful that you've come here to visit Thailand and you go to all these other places, because that stuff is fun and enjoyable to travel around, but it's not going to solve your stress. It's not going to fix it. That's what the Buddha is saying, is that when you're threatened with this danger, you might go to all these different places, but that's not going to protect you. That's what the refuge is protection. What he's saying is what actually gains release from discontentedness and stress is having gone to the Buddha, the teachings, and the community. This is referred to as the triple gem. When you build confidence in the Buddha, and you have access to his teachings, and you're part of a community, you have the ability to train your mind and actually make your way to the ending of stress and discontentedness. Because the more that you study the teachings of the Buddha, you will see that they absolutely work. They lead exactly where he said they do, to this peaceful, joyful mental state that is enlightenment. But if you lack confidence in the Buddha, you won't even give his teachings a look. Or if you don't have access to his teachings, you won't even be able to look at them. If you're not part of a community, you won't have resources and people to be able to help you. So when someone first comes to the path to enlightenment, they typically don't have confidence in the Buddha because they don't know whether his teachings are actually true or false. They don't even know if this person actually lived or not. They have no idea, right? But the way that you eliminate that lack of confidence, that doubt in the mind, is you start investigating his teachings. If you investigate and examine his teachings and you start reflecting on them to independently verify if they're true or false, and you start practicing them on a day-to-day basis, you'll see that they work. And that's what the Buddha is saying, that that's where you'll be able to see that these teachings actually work. Because what he's saying here is you see with right wisdom the Four Noble Truths if you go to the Buddha, the teachings, and the community. What the Four Noble Truths is the very first teaching of the Buddha. This is where he helps you to have this breakthrough to understanding what is the problem in your mind, what is the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. The problem is that the mind experiences conditioned feelings. It's called discontentedness. The problem is that when you experience getting what you want, then you will get happy, you will get excited, you will get elated, you'll get pleasant feelings. But then when you're not getting what you want, you get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and things like this. And then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings as well, that kind of like dissatisfaction or displeasure. So the problem is in the unenlightened mind is going up and down, up and down. You get really happy, you get really excited, but then you get sad and frustrated and agitated and annoyed. The mind's going up and down. This is the problem that each unenlightened being experiences. The cause of that problem is called craving, desire, attachment. Wants and expectations. The mind is longing, yearning, wanting things to be satisfying, wanting things to be permanently agreeable. So if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like anger, sadness, and others. So for example, if you really want it to be sunny outside and you see it's sunny outside, you'll get so happy, right? Because yay, I get to go outside and play. I'm going to go hiking. I'm going to go have some fun. But then when it starts raining, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed because you're not getting what you want, right? Or if your bank account balance is up here, you'll be so happy. Yay, look at all that money I've got in my bank account. But then when you have to pay some bills and it goes down here, oh, you're so frustrated or agitated. All that's happened is change. That's all that's happened. The world is full of change. The whole world around you is constantly changing. It's impermanent. But if your mind craves permanence, wanting things to be a certain way permanently, then when you're not getting what you want, you'll be angry and frustrated and sad. So you can think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you were with. When you guys first came together, you were probably so happy and so excited. But when you guys broke up, you were probably sad or frustrated or angry, or maybe you were lonely or bored, or you were missing this person. This is because the mind was holding on to them, wanting them to be permanent, when in reality, you live in an impermanent world. It wasn't your love or your care that was causing that painful feelings. It was your mind holding on to this person. When you let go, that's when you regained your peacefulness. Because at some point you were like, you know what, if he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let go and you regained your peacefulness. You stopped thinking about that person so much, right? When you maybe said, you know what, if she wants to move to another part of the world and she doesn't want to live near me, that's okay. Let it go. And you let go. And that's when your mind regained its peacefulness. But as long as you're holding on with craving, desire, attachment, wanting things to be a certain way, expecting things to be a certain way, they can't be that way permanently, because it's only in your mind that wants things to be that way. And as long as you have that in your mind, you're going to experience happiness when you're getting what you want, and you'll be angry and sad when you don't get what you want. We can remember when we were children. We got chocolate and ice cream from our parents. Oh my gosh, it was the best day ever. Yay, mommy and daddy got me chocolate and ice cream. Oh, yay. We were so excited, right? But then at some point when we asked mom and dad for chocolate and ice cream, they said, no, you can't have any. You're the worst mommy and daddy ever. That was coming from our own mind. The only thing we experienced was impermanence. Some days we're going to be able to have chocolate and ice cream, and other days we can't. That's just the temporary nature of this chocolate and ice cream. We can't have it permanently. But if you can only be happy when you get what you want, then that means your happiness shrinks, because the mind's going to say, well, if my mom and dad do this, if my boss does this, if my bank account is this, if the weather is this, if this is happening, then I will be happy. Right? That's a whole lot of conditions and expectations that you're putting on yourself. And now that your ability to be happy shrinks smaller and smaller and smaller. So the Buddha teaches you what's actually causing these feelings is inside your own mind. It's called craving, desire, attachment. And you can verify this for yourself, because as I mentioned, none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. You can look at a recent time when you've been angry or frustrated or sad or some other discontent feeling, and you can see that it was your own mind that was causing it. There was something you wanted. There was something you were longing, yearning for. And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, your mind got angry or frustrated. right? Maybe you're really excited to come to Thailand, and when you showed up to the airport, your flight was delayed, and now maybe you were frustrated or agitated. All that was impermanence, right? This airplane can't take off on time. There's going to be a crew issue, a maintenance issue, a weather issue. Every single plane cannot take off on time. It's just not possible. So as long as your mind is craving and longing, yearning, and if it gets what it wants, which is that plane taking off on time, you'll be happy. But if it doesn't take off on time, you may be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. So you need to be able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, because that's what's then going to help you to understand the transcending or the elimination of these feelings. Because oftentimes what the unenlightened mind does is it misunderstands what the real problem is. It thinks the problem is external. So you might be going around and trying to solve the problem externally. You might be pushing people away out of your life. There might be certain friends or family members you've pushed away out of your life. Or you might have been bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, almost trying to fear them into doing things your way. Or you might have been putting expectations on people and trying to control people to do things your way. But that doesn't fix the problem, because the real cause is the craving, desire, attachment. So the way to eliminate the discontent feelings is to eliminate the cause. If you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, that will help you transcend the stress or eliminate the discontentedness. But the mind lacks wisdom of how to do that. And that's where the Eightfold Path comes in. That's the complete perfect plan that's going to teach you how to eliminate your craving, your longing, your yearning, your chasing after the objects of your affection, wanting things to be a certain way. And that's where the Buddha says, that's the secure refuge. That's the supreme refuge. Because once you cure your mind, there's nothing that can shake it up. There's nothing whatsoever. Right now, if your mind is experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and annoyment and things like this in your life, it's like your mind is bound up. It's like chained down. It's only a matter of time before something gets triggered in your mind and you're annoyed or frustrated or agitated. But when you train your mind and you get rid of these pollutions, the mind is free. It's liberated. And that's the secure refuge, meaning that's the secure protection, because your mind is protected, that no matter what you experience, you can maintain your peace. You can maintain your joy, right? That's the true protection. So going away to this cabin in the forest or a park or a beach or a remote island, that's not the secure refuge. That's not the place that's going to help you eliminate your stress. Although you might do those things because they're fun and they're enjoyable and you might decide to go do those things. That's not going to ultimately eliminate your stress, because as soon as you go back to your life, you're going to experience the stress all over again, because your mind followed you, right? Your mind followed you back to work. Your mind followed you back to that conversation with your mom. That mind followed you back into work and all these other places. So the mountains, the forests, the parks, the tree shrines, the remote island, that's not going to solve your stress. But training your mind, eliminating the pollutions from the mind, that's what's going to solve your stress. And that's what the Buddha's helping you to be able to see here. What is the true refuge, the true protection of the mind? It's training of the mind. So do you guys have any questions on this chapter? Remember, if you can use the mics here, and those of you guys online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Looks like Chris has a question here on Facebook. Zoom. Let's see, Chris says, without being in Chiang Mai, Thailand, how can a person take refuge in the community, given that these teachings are often not taught in one's local community? So that's the beauty of where we are in our time and place right now, Chris, in history, is that you can actually be part of a community without being physically in the same spot as the teacher, right? And the community members, because we have technology to live stream, and you're coming in from the Philippines, and now from being in the Philippines, you're still a member of the community. you're interacting with people in the community. I know you message people, you have conversations with people. Essentially, being a member of a community means you have access to a teacher, and it means you also learn from other community members. Because when you're around different people and you see people interacting in the world from the community, you're going to see them interacting through these teachings. So for example, like you've been involved in many classes and you see that people are oftentimes generous and polite and respectful as they're interacting in the class, you're learning from that. So that's what it means to be part of a community, that you're interacting with other people who are on the path to enlightenment. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to physically be in the same location as them. Okay, any questions here? I'm going to look on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, I see your comment there in YouTube too, Chris. Looks like you're in Zoom and YouTube. All right. All right, I don't see any questions anywhere else. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Would somebody like to read chapter 2? You got it, Rachel? Yeah.
Beings are few who are reborn among human beings or heavenly beings because they have not seen the Four Noble Truths. Then the perfectly enlightened one took up a little bit of soil in his fingernail and addressed the monks thus: "What do you think, monks, which is more, the little bit of soil in my fingernail or the great earth?" "Venerable sir, the great earth is more. The little bit of soil that the perfectly enlightened one has taken up in his fingernail is insignificant. Compared to the great earth, that little bit of soil is not calculable, does not bear comparison, does not amount even to a fraction. So too, monks, those beings are few who, when they pass away as human beings, are reborn among human beings. But those beings are more numerous who, when they pass away as human beings, are reborn in hell, in the animal realm, in the realm of afflicted spirits. For what reason? Because, monks, they have not seen the Four Noble Truths. What for? The Four Noble Truth of discontentedness, the noble truth of the cause of discontentedness, the noble truth of the elimination of discontentedness, the noble truth of the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand. This is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. What do you think, monks, which is more, the little bit of soil in my fingernail or the great earth? Venerable sir, the great earth is more. The little bit of soil that the perfectly enlightened one has taken up in his fingernail is insignificant. Compared to the great earth, the little bit of soil that the perfectly enlightened one has taken up in his fingernail is not calculable, does not bear comparison, does not amount even to a fraction. So too, monks, those beings are few who, when they pass away as human beings, are reborn among the heavenly beings. But those beings are more numerous who, when they pass away as human beings, are reborn in hell, in the animal realm, in the realm of afflicted spirits. For what reason? Because, monks, they have not seen the Four Noble Truths. What for? The noble truth of discontentedness, the noble truth of the cause of discontentedness, the noble truth of the elimination of discontentedness, the noble truth of the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand. This is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand. This is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, so as I mentioned to you guys, there's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that is based in belief, including the cycle of rebirth in these 5 realms of existence that he taught. You can actually independently verify the cycle of rebirth in these 5 realms of existence. You might not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but if you progress on the path, you can surely do that. In volume 11, chapter 105 of our book series, I put 17 different criteria criteria of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. Right now, you might be believing you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence of that, other than the fact that at this particular moment, you might not be able to remember your past lives. But if you start training your mind and you lift out this pollution out of the mind, it's like going up to the higher vantage point of a mountain, and now you can see more of this life and potentially your previous lives as well. And this is something that can occur. And the Buddha taught you about the cycle of rebirth because this is truly what is happening. And if you start having vivid memories of your past lives, like say, for example, maybe you were murdered in a past life, you could actually be really shaken up by that if you didn't know that that was your past life memories. So right now, there's a lot of people who are believing they only have one life, and they haven't necessarily put together the evidence to be able to see that there's a cycle of rebirth where you're continually being reborn over and over and over again. And even these 5 realms that the Buddha taught, the hell realm, the animal realm, of course, you probably verified that one. The afflicted spirits realm, which is like ghost. The human realm, which you verified that one. And then the heavenly realm, which you may or may not have verified that one. None of these realms are permanent. Sometimes people are taught that you're sent to heaven or you're sent to hell by some being. This isn't actually true. Beings are moving in and out of these realms all the time based on their own decisions. None of these realms are actually permanent. The ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha isn't to be reborn in heaven, right? That's not his ultimate goal of his teachings. His ultimate goal of the teachings is to help you get to a peaceful and joyful life now. His teachings aren't about getting to some afterlife after this that is glorious and wonderful. He's teaching you how to get to that wonderful life now through learning and practicing the teachings, getting to that enlightened mental state now in this life. But he does teach about these things because students ask him about these things. So he does teach about the 5 realms. He teaches about the cycle of rebirth because you're going to need this information. Because as you're journeying on the path to enlightenment, as I shared with you, the Buddha is not teaching you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. And if you didn't know that the world has 5 realms and that there's a cycle of rebirth, you could be really shaken up if you start seeing things like ghosts. Right? There's people in the world who see these ghosts. You could be really shaken up by that. If you didn't understand, like, oh, that's normal, right? Just like you see an animal or a human being walking down the street, it's possible for you to be able to see ghosts or heavenly beings or even hell beings as well. You can even sometimes have communication with these beings where these beings are actually communicating with you because they're all in the same time and space. Sometimes we think hell beings are like deep down in the core of the earth or heavenly beings are way up in the sky somewhere far, far away. This isn't actually true. We're all right here in the same time and space. And just like there's a human being sitting in this chair now, if I got up and left, there could be potentially an animal that comes in and sits here in this chair as well, because we're all in the same time and space, right? So if you didn't understand how the world is and you started having some of these experiences like remembering your past lives, seeing beings from other realms, hearing beings from other realms, you could be really shaken up by that. But just like you could sit at a table at a restaurant and you could hear 2 human beings talking next to you and you can ignore that and you can be completely comfortable with that, it's the same thing that's true with these other beings from other realms too. When you hear them talking, you can just choose to ignore it. You don't need to pay attention to it. You can just understand that these are other beings in the world. So the Buddha is essentially saying here, he's saying that the people who are reborn from the human realm back into the human realm are very few. That if you're being reborn into the human realm or you're being reborn into the heavenly realm, it's somewhat rare. It's very rare. In fact, he talks about how rare it is. And because of this, it's wise for you to not allow this human existence that you have right now to go to waste, because you have this opportunity in this human realm to be able to make your way to enlightenment. It's rare for an individual to be able to come into the human realm, but this is the most ideal existence for you to cultivate your mind and train your mind. But oftentimes people don't know about these teachings. They don't even realize it's an option to no longer experience anger. They think they're just going to experience anger and sadness and frustration the rest of their life. But you don't have to keep experiencing that over and over. Just like you get an email and you can opt out of an email, you can opt out of anger and sadness and frustration. You can choose to no longer experience that if you decide to train your mind. So the Buddha is saying here that beings being reborn into the human realm are very rare because they haven't seen the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is the very first teaching that's going to guide you to understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. This is where you can have a breakthrough. If you study the Four Noble Truths in detail, you can see with clarity in a way that you can independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Now you can actually work on it and you can fix it. If you're out there in the world trying to change mom and dad and brothers and sisters and people like this, you'll never get to peacefulness that way because you can't change these people. They're not going to do things your way, right? You're the only person who does things your way. So if you're out there trying to change other people and you think that's going to lead to peacefulness, you're not going to be able to get to peacefulness that way. You need to change your own mind and you need to transform your own mind. And it's the Four Noble Truths that is the first teaching that's going to help you to do that. And by changing your mind through understanding the Four Noble Truths and all the other teachings, you're starting to purify your mind. And as you start to purify your mind, if for some reason you fall short of enlightenment, what the Buddha is explaining is there's more likelihood. This is kind of like not overtly he's explaining this, but it's implied. There's more likelihood that you're going to be reborn back into the human realm or in the heavenly realm, which is an opportunity to then get to enlightenment. But because beings aren't being exposed to the Four Noble Truths and they're not learning the Four Noble Truths, that's why they're being reborn down into the lower realms, because they're not working on purifying their mind. They're not working on developing wholesome qualities in their mind. It's not God or any other being that's sending you to hell or the animal realm or the afflicted spirit realm. It's your own decisions. It's a cause and effect. And if you choose not to grow and learn and develop and purify your mind, then you're going to experience those challenges, not only in this life, but in future lives as well. The Buddha doesn't use the lower realms of existence to try to guilt, shame, or fear anybody into learning his teachings. He's just telling you the way it is. He's explaining true reality. And if your mind is polluted, if your mind is making unwise decisions, if you're bitter, you're harsh, you're hostile, you're vindictive, you're resentful, then you're more likely to be reborn into the hell realm, the animal realm, and the afflicted spirit realm. And he needs to tell students this because they need to know what true reality is and then make the decision for themselves of what they would like to do. So he's saying that about the human realm, but he's also saying that down here about the heavenly realm as well. That is very rare for beings to be reborn into the heavenly realm. And again, the heavenly realm is not permanent. Those beings are still in the cycle of rebirth. They still have to get to enlightenment, and they're more likely, once they're in the heavenly realm, to then be reborn down into the lower realms as well. Because in the heavenly realm, those beings only experience pleasant feelings and they tend to be pretty complacent and they don't learn and grow and develop and be able to train their mind. So oftentimes beings in the heavenly realm go down to the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, or back into the human realm potentially. So what the Buddha is saying is that because it's these Four Noble Truths that are the real start of the path in helping you to develop wholesome qualities in your mind, that you should make an effort during this life in order to learn and grow and develop. The Buddha didn't want anything from you. He didn't expect anything from you. He wasn't trying to convince you of anything. He's just explaining to you what he did in order to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. And if that's what you would like to experience, his teachings will guide you in doing that. So what he's doing here is he's encouraging you to make an effort to understand the Four Noble Truths. And if you're interested in doing that, we have plenty of resources to help you do that. Books, videos, podcasts, classes, courses, retreats, personal guidance, all of these things are available at no cost. So the Buddha here is just helping you to understand that it's very rare for individuals to be reborn in these other realms of human and heavenly realm. And it's because they haven't been exposed to the Four Noble Truths. And he's encouraging you to learn and practice the Four Noble Truths. Not in a way to guilt, shame, or fear anybody into doing that, but just helping you to understand the benefit and the value of having done so. Do you guys have any questions on this chapter? Okay, I don't see any questions. Let me just check Facebook and YouTube. All right, I don't see any. Okay, let's go to the next chapter. Is there someone who would like to read chapter 3? Okay, Chris. Go with Chris. All right, sir, go ahead.
Noble truth is not impossible to know. The noble ones are plenty. There are not only 100 vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more male ordained practitioners, my disciples, who by realizing for themselves with direct knowledge, experience here and now, enter upon and reside in the liberation of mind and liberation by wisdom that are taintless with the destruction of the taints. There are not only 100 vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more female ordained practitioners, my disciples, who by realizing for themselves with direct knowledge, experience here and now, enter upon and reside in the liberation of mind and liberation by wisdom that are taintless with the destruction of the taints. There are not only 100 vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more male household practitioners, my disciples, clothed in white, leading lives of celibacy, who with the destruction of the 5 lower fetters will appear spontaneously in the heavenly realm and there attain final nibbana, final enlightenment, without ever returning from that world. There are not only 100 vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more male household practitioners, my disciples, clothed in white, enjoying sensual pleasures, who carry out my instruction, respond to my advice, have gone beyond doubt, become free from confusion, gain courage, and become independent of others in the teacher's teachings. There are not only 100 vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more female household practitioners, my disciples, clothed in white, leading lives of celibacy, with the destruction of the 5 lower fetters, will appear spontaneously in the heavenly realm, and there attain final nibbana, final enlightenment, without ever returning from that world. There are not only 100 vacha, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, but far more female household practitioners, my disciples, clothed in white, enjoying sensual pleasures, who carry out my instruction, respond to my advice, have gone beyond doubt, become free of confusion, gain courage, and become independent of others in the teacher's teachings.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So here, what the Buddha is saying is that, hey, there's these, hundreds and hundreds, and if you add this up, thousands of people that are learning from him during his lifetime, and they have understood, right? These teachings aren't, I wouldn't say they're easy to understand, but they're not difficult to understand either. Oftentimes people don't take the time to understand them, or they're not learning with resources that will help them to understand, or more frequently people are complacent in trying to understand the teachings. If you're done with anger and sadness and frustration and you're interested in something better, that's when it's time to start examining the teachings of the Buddha. But what he's saying is it's not impossible to learn these teachings, that it is possible. There's hundreds and hundreds and ultimately thousands during the lifetime of the Buddha that were learning and practicing his teachings. So he's talking about ordained practitioners and household practitioners that are essentially making their way to enlightenment. And one of the reasons why I particularly like this discourse of the Buddha is right here, this particular paragraph. This is so important. There's some people in the world that will tell you that women cannot get to enlightenment. And this is very unfortunate that they have that misunderstanding. But here you can see very clear in the words of the Buddha that females were making their way to enlightenment, because that's what it means when he says those who are realizing by himself with direct knowledge here and now enter upon and reside in the liberation of mind and liberation by wisdom that are taintless with the destruction of the taints. The taints are the pollutions that the Buddha discovered, the fetters. And that's how you actually get to enlightenment, by eliminating the fetters or the taints or the pollution of the mind. So what he's describing here with these females and these males up here, he's describing people who are getting to enlightenment. So if you ever hear anybody that says that a female cannot get to enlightenment, you can see the original words of the Buddha that just isn't true. And that person has misunderstood his teachings, right? The Buddha shares in other teachings that if you ever hear anything that conflicts with his teachings and that is opposite of his teachings, that you should consider that that person has misunderstood his teachings, and you should ignore that teaching because that person is misunderstood. So if you ever hear somebody say not only that women can't get to enlightenment, you might hear some people say that people who prefer same-gender relationships can't get to enlightenment and things like this. This just isn't true. There's probably even people that say transgender individuals can't get to enlightenment. This just isn't true. Everybody and anybody can make their way to enlightenment. If you have the ability to be able to intellectually learn and understand, and you're able to actively cultivate understanding and wisdom and knowledge within your mind and apply that in your day-to-day life, you can make your way to enlightenment. So this particular discourse is helping you understand that it's not impossible to know the Four Noble Truths and gain this wisdom to get to enlightenment. But one of the reasons why I particularly like this is because it says very clearly that females are able to make their way to enlightenment. So if you ever hear anything opposite of that, you know that it's not true. That males and females, transgender, anybody and anybody that can intellectually learn and understand can make their way to enlightenment. These other things that he's talking about here with household practitioners, he's talking about household practitioners getting to either the first, second, or third stage of enlightenment, but household practitioners can actually get to enlightenment as well. It was less common during the lifetime of the Buddha for a household practitioner to get to enlightenment because they were so busy and so active with just daily life to be able to sustain their life. If you can imagine 2,500 years ago, it was a lot more challenging for us. Just to get water in our house was like an all-day affair. We had to carry buckets to the water, fill up these buckets, carrying them to our house, dumping them in the trough, carrying back to the water well, filling up the water buckets, carrying them to our house, dumping them. This was like all day affair just to get water to our house. We kind of take it for granted that we can just walk over to a spigot, turn a water and boom, or turn a spigot and we've got water in our house immediately, right? That's that's a new development from 2,500 years ago. Just getting food on your table 2,500 years ago. There wasn't necessarily a grocery store to just run down, pick up a ready-made meal and just be eating within 5 minutes, right? You had to actually take a seed, put it in the ground, cultivate that seed, water that seed, grow that plant, nurture that plant, harvest that particular thing, bring it into your house, cut it up and cook it. There was a lot of work involved just in getting food, right? So household practitioners during the lifetime of the Buddha had less opportunity to learn and practice these teachings because they were so busy with just daily life. Where nowadays we've systematized things to the point where we have so much time that we tend to fill it up with unbeneficial things. You might be doing things like social media or, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze in a moment. Not yet. It's going to come. Here it comes. Nope. Okay. So you might actually be filling up your life with all kinds of other things, right? Like there's no problem with social media or watching YouTube videos or things like this. But if you're doing it excessively, it's taking you away from doing other beneficial things in your life, like reading books and meditating and coming to the temple and things of this nature. So yeah, maybe you do social media. Maybe you watch some YouTube videos. That stuff is fun and enjoyable, and you can actually learn some things that way too. But you're going to need to find the middle way with that, where you're doing that in moderation. And then you give yourself time to also learn and grow and develop on the path. Because now you have actually a better opportunity to get to enlightenment than household practitioners even did during the lifetime of the Buddha, because the teachings are once again shining in the world and available for you to be able to learn and practice and develop. And now you have the actual time to do that, where during the lifetime of the Buddha, household practitioners didn't have that time. So mostly it was ordained practitioners who was getting to enlightenment, but there were household practitioners getting to enlightenment during his lifetime too, but they were usually wealthy, because they had servants to take care of their daily affairs and they could spend time to do other things. But people who were busy doing laborious jobs, they didn't have as much time to be able to dedicate to learning and growing and developing. But nowadays, even the common person has quite a bit of time in our life to be able to do things like read books and meditate and things like this. You're just going to need to find that time by eliminating some of the unbeneficial things, or at least bringing it to a minimum. That way you can grow and develop into a better and better human being. Because what the path to enlightenment is, it's like an evolution of our species. We can get to a point where this species of a human being no longer experiences any anger or sadness or frustration. And that's each individual's personal choice to choose to do that. We can evolve into a better and better human being. Just like a lizard or a snake or something like this evolves and grows and develops, human beings can experience exactly the same thing as well. So it's each individual's choice to be able to do that. And now we have a lot more time to be able to do that. And you have all the resources available for you to do that. So do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter where the Buddha is helping you to be able to see like, hey, there's plenty of people that are learning and practicing and getting to enlightenment? Any questions here? Okay. Not seeing any questions. Maybe we'll do one more. Let's see what this next one is, and then we'll kind of end class there. Yeah, maybe we'll do this one. Someone would like to read this one? Everybody shy this morning? Yeah, Rachel. Rachel's not shy. She's been learning and practicing these teachings for a while.
With the teachings and yourself as your refuge. But have I not already declared, Ananda, that we must be parted, separated, and severed from all who are dear and agreeable to us? How, Ananda, is it to be obtained here? May what is born come to be conditioned and subject to disintegration, not disintegrate. That is impossible. It is just as if the largest branch would break off a great tree standing possessed of heartwood. So too, Ananda, in this great monk community standing possessed of heartwood, Sariputta has attained final nibbana, final enlightenment. How, Ananda, is it to be obtained here? May what is born come to be conditioned and subject to disintegration, not disintegrate. That is impossible. Therefore, Ananda, reside with yourself as your own island, with yourself as your own refuge, with no other refuge. Reside with the teachings as your island, with the teachings as your refuge, with no other refuge. And how, Ananda, does a monk reside with himself as his own island, with himself as his own refuge, with no other refuge, with the teachings as his island and the teachings as his refuge, with no other refuge? Here, Ananda, a monk resides reflecting on the body as body, dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regards to the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, mind as mind, mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world. Those monks, Ananda, either now or after I am gone, who reside with themselves as their own island, with themselves as their own refuge, with no other refuge, who reside with the teachings as their island, with the teachings as their refuge, with no other refuge, it is these monks, Ananda, who will be for me topmost of those determined on the training.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here, what the Buddha is saying is, don't just follow the crowd. That's essentially what he's saying, right? Reside with yourself as your own island. What the unenlightened mind will tend to do is it will conform to what other people are doing around you. If you're around other people and they're using profanity, you might start using profanity. If you're around other people and they're drinking alcohol, you might start drinking alcohol. You just kind of conform to what other people are doing. If other people are gossiping and slandering and being hateful and bitter and harsh, you might start doing the same thing. But if you're wise, if you know the teachings and you know what is wise and unwise, you will make wise decisions. That's what he's saying here, to reside with the teachings as your refuge, right? The teachings, the Buddha is explaining to you what is wise and unwise based on the natural laws. And when you understand what's wise and unwise, you will be able to make your own wise decisions. You won't just conform to what other people are doing around you, because an enlightened being doesn't conform. Even somebody who's on the path to enlightenment and looking to get to enlightenment, they're not a follower. They're not a devotee. They are an independent practitioner who's actively cultivating wisdom to understand the world around them, and they're actively working to make wise decisions to be able to move their mind closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. So if somebody's not interested in following other people, you'd be perfect for the path to enlightenment, because you'd like to see the truth for yourself and cultivate wisdom. And that's what the Buddha is saying here about being your own island, that you don't just follow other people. And a person who's not a follower will actually do really well on this path to enlightenment, because they're going to be interested in seeing the truth for themselves. So the Buddha is saying, reside with yourself as your own island, because what was happening here is one of the Buddha's close students, Sariputta, actually died. He died before the Buddha. And his other student, Ananda, was having some trouble with that. Ananda was with the Buddha his entire teaching career, but he never got to enlightenment during the lifetime of the Buddha. It wasn't until shortly after the Buddha died that he actually got to enlightenment, because it was clear that he was attached to the Buddha. He had a desire, a craving, holding on to the Buddha. So Ananda was having a tough time with Sariputta's death. And the Buddha says, hey, have I not explained to you that what is born and come to be, it's subject to disintegration, that it's going to disintegrate, right? Like the Buddha already explained the universal truth of impermanence. Like, why are you so upset with Sariputta's death? He was born, so therefore he had to die. No need to hold on to him and crave permanence. This individual has died. They've gotten to enlightenment, is what he's basically saying right here. He said Sariputta has attained final nibbana, which means he got to enlightenment, right? He was able to get to enlightenment. So the Buddha is just reminding his student, Ananda, like, hey, everything's impermanent around you. No need to be upset. No need to be frustrated that Sariputta has died. You know, he was impermanent. Of course he's died, because he was born, he had to die. And then the Buddha is saying, reside with yourself as your own refuge. Don't just follow everybody else, because there were probably other people in the community who were upset and frustrated as well. And then the Buddha is pointing out what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness and saying to learn that, which I won't go into today, but for those of you guys that know the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that's what he's doing here. And then ultimately he says, okay, either now or after I'm gone, those people who reside with themselves as their own island, meaning they don't follow other people, they will be the topmost of the determined on the teachings, right? Because they're not going to be followers. Anytime you have someone in a community who is not a follower, they're going to do really well with these teachings, because they're going to look to figure out what is the truth. Because the teacher is like a tour guide. We can't give you enlightenment. We can point out for you the things that you need to learn and grow and develop, but it's you that needs to do the work. And you don't just follow people. You observe what is wise and unwise, and the Buddha will help you to be able to see that. So do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter? You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Looks like Chris has a question here on Zoom. He says, it seems the Buddha did not mention the teacher or the Buddha as a refuge. Can you explain why the teacher and the Buddha was excluded in the sutta? So the Buddha teaches different parts of his teachings at different times. He doesn't always mention everything all in one sutta. So in the other sutta, you saw the other discourse. You saw that he did mention the Buddha, the teachings in the community, but in this one, he's just focusing on the teachings specifically. But of course, if you've seen the teachings of the Buddha in the totality, then you know that you need confidence in the Buddha, access to his teachings, and to be part of the community. This is why it's important to never look at the teachings of the Buddha in isolation with just one discourse. You need to look at the totality of all the discourses. And then that's what helps you to form your understanding of what's needed to make your way to enlightenment. So here he's just highlighting the teachings. Okay. Hello to everyone on YouTube. I can see everybody there. Hello to anyone joining us on Facebook. All right. I don't see any other questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end class here by thanking all of you guys for joining at the temple. Thank you for everyone online as well. What I do in the evenings is I teach this same class. I do it from home and I live stream it, and I teach all 10 chapters. We do 10 chapters a week. So if there's anybody who's really interested in exploring the Pali Canon and English study group, this is a great class for you, but also the evening we'll actually study all 10 chapters. If you're just getting started with the path to enlightenment, tomorrow is the group learning program. I'm coming to the end of that iteration of the group learning program, and we're in a section called the frequently asked questions section. There's going to be 11 different frequently asked questions that students ask me, and I'm going to be talking about those frequently asked questions tomorrow and helping you understand the answers to them. Of course, we're going to be doing meditation, but then we're going to be doing that as well. That's a great program for anybody just starting out. And like I mentioned, this first book is a great place to start, and you can get it on our website. website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us, or you can get it on Amazon. So if you're done with the anger, you're done with the sadness, you're tired of the broken relationships, you're tired of the stress and anxiety and struggles in life, the teachings of the Buddha are here to help you. And if you are interested in having someone that's motivated to be able to help you, I'm very motivated to be able to help you on this path. All you need to do is reach out and let me know that you need help, and I'm here to help you. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Take care and be well. Sawadee Kap. Sawadee Kap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.